writer's block is you think really want to write this book?
Would everybody mind coming back in so that we can resume the schedule? Hello everyone, welcome to Varuna and welcome to the celebration today of the work and the lives of Norman Talbot, Dorothy Hewett and Merv Lilley. I'll be kind of doing some moving between segments. I'm Rose Lilley, Merv Lilley and Dorothy Hewett's youngest daughter, and Marilla's giving me the job of doing the general introduction, so there's a little bit of business that I'll just have to go through. First of all, thank you to everyone for attending, particularly thank you to those people who have come from interstate, and I even have a list because Marilla's very organised. So we wanted to in particular thank Carol Ferrier and Charlotte from Brisbane for coming, Alison Richards for coming from Melbourne, my brother Joe Flood and his partner Tissy and her girls, and also my nephew Daniel, all have come from Melbourne for the event. First up we have a welcome to country by Auntie Val Harish, Darug Elder, and then we'll be having the Newcastle segment of the program, and I'll be handing over to Don, who will introduce that.
Good afternoon. My name is Auntie Val Orish. I'm the Darug Elder. The Darug Nation started from the sea. Port Jackson, Wiseman Ferry and Botany Bay, and also the Appins and the Blue Mountains. On behalf of my people, both past and present, I welcome you to Darug country and have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome everybody. Since the beginning of the Newcastle segment, I have my team here ready to roll. Just a couple of quick things. First of all, I'd like to thank Marilla again. This whole extravaganza started in January when she approached us at Catchfire Press in Newcastle, and I foolishly said yes, I'll be involved. I'd like to help. And 9 months later, after losing a bit of hair and everything, but we're here and we're filling the place up, which is great. So I won't say much more than that, except a couple of things that I knew Norman better through Catchfire Press. He was the president for a number of years, and I was the secretary. He certainly kept me honest over that period. And I also knew him many years before at Newcastle University. He tutored me in some of the subjects, and I was doing my English degree. So, here's a person who knows a lot more about Norman than I do, and I'll introduce her. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Jean Talbot.
Hello everyone. It's wonderful to see such a full room of people to come and listen to poetry and to honour Norman and to honour Dorothy and Merv. And this is the first time I've been to this place, and it's a beautiful setting in which to do this. And I also want to thank Marilla for her energy and her enthusiasm. I'm going to start off with a little bit of biography about Norman. Some of you will have known him when we came to Australia and when he was at the University of Newcastle. Some of you perhaps don't know anything about him. So I'll start at the beginning. And I will weave in the poems that I've chosen into that account, because the poems often tell the story better than I can. Norman Clare Talbot was born prematurely on September the 14th, 1936. One of the reasons we chose this weekend was that there were several birthdays. Norman's yesterday, Merv's yesterday, Marilla's yesterday, my housemate's yesterday. There's something about September the 14th which seems to be extraordinarily significant. So that made this weekend an absolute must. There might have been someone I've forgotten, but there seemed to be an awful conjunction of stars which brought us here. So Norman was born prematurely on September the 14th, 1936, in the village of Clare in the East Anglian county of Suffolk. And so the name Clare in the middle of his name was probably because of the village where he was born. Labour being brought on, so he told me, by his mother's first ride in an automobile. So he blamed Henry Ford. And he also told me that he was delivered by the local vicar on a farmhouse table, which was a suitably dramatic entrance for such a personality as Norman was. Whether that story is true or not is another matter. His surviving brother, Frank, aged 90 now, it begs to differ, but I'm not sure that he was paying a lot of attention at the time. He was 15 and quite a bit embarrassed, I believe, by having a new sibling come into the world when his mother was 46. I think his parents must also have been a bit embarrassed, because apparently Agnes, his mother, kept the pregnancy rather secret. She didn't appear in the village, so that it was a bit of a surprise to everybody when Frank went down to the local pub after Norman was born and said, and they asked after her, and he said she was well, and said in a matter-of-fact tone, "Had another boy." That was the announcement. So that made 4 boys. Stanley, 19, old enough to be Norman's father almost. Leslie, 17, may not have been living at home by then. So Norman's mother, before marriage, had been a between maid at a big house, and his father was a farm labourer. And one of his early jobs was to look after and to drive the big cart horses, the Suffolk punches, which drew the plough. And I always think of him when reading that poem by Seamus Heaney called Follower, and which starts, "My father worked with a horse plough," because it doesn't seem that long ago, but that seems a very archaic form of agriculture, but that's a connection with that form of agriculture. And there are other parallels to be drawn between the two poets, because both were brought up in rural poverty around the same time. Heaney's slightly younger than Norman would have been. Heaney in Northern Ireland, Norman in England. And it was because of the Post-War Education Act that boys, children like them, got the chance to go to academic secondary school and to go on to university, a sort of progress which was totally out of the ken of their parents. So, and that, of course, was what enabled Norman and me, from widely different social backgrounds, to meet at Durham University. And there is a picture of us at graduation on the programme, 1959. So I'll start with a poem about hens, and it's hen poem, because always, I think, at their small holding there were hens, and at some time they were producing quite commercial numbers of eggs. First, Hen Sonnet. The first time I remember is the sun's own shine of corn upon the shine of hens, is the mixed gleams of barley, oats, fat wheat, and glistening alien maize. The thrilled rill through fudgy palms, through my fat fingers, runs back to the bent metal bowl, the full spill of autumn. How their single eyes retreat. How sweet fleet hunger scuffs all those fat hens. 2 hens leap high, walk on my newborn pram. I beam and flap them, autumn's gift to hens. No, they shan't leap up. I am that I am. Look, birds, I am 2 cups. I fling out away my plenty from fingers whose splayed stray play strews summer corn for. See, Mum, see the hens. It's a lovely early memory, very vivid. The second poem I chose is called Mum in a Photograph, and this particular photograph is there where, listening to the poem, you can get a very strong visual impression. Mum in a photograph. A photograph. She didn't let many get took. Might do it, might clear it all up. But we've never had a family group, and that wouldn't have been right anyhow. The picture has her seated on the lawn, and that's a middle room chair, though it's outside, and Dad, awkwardly dapper, stands beside. And I'm that white-haired boy, just barber shorn. That taller girl, hands clasped, sulky half scowl, doesn't belong. That's Enid, my cousin. Just happened to turn up. Mum stood her there. Once in her life she fitted someone in. To place a female there is to take care no one will think my mum was in control. Well, that's a very serene picture. When you see it on the website, you'll see it's calm and it's happy, apart from Enid, who seemed to be out of sulky for whatever reason. But unfortunately, that picture was not going to remain so calm and serene, because the three elder brothers were it was wartime, and the three elder brothers were away fighting in the war, and two of them didn't come back. And it was when the second brother died. In fact, after the war with Japan had been declared ended, and the death of the second brother, Leslie, at that time, had such an impact on Norman's mother, especially on the whole family, that she was really never the same again. And in those days there was no counselling, no post-traumatic stress treatment or anything like that. So really, she came from being a very outgoing, very bubbly sort of personality, as far as I can gather, into being quite a recluse. So I want to read the poem Nine Tailors, which Norman wrote about that event. And it has a great authenticity about it. And the strange thing is, I was going to say this after the poem, but I'll say it now, was that the way of dealing with grief then, or not dealing with it, was to actually tear up all the pictures and records as if those boys had never existed. And that was what happened in that family. And I find it tremendously moving and upsetting. And now I'm the only one who, with the evidence in a way, it's almost as if I've made it up, but I haven't. And the poem, I think, especially, shows the authenticity of the impact of that second death on Norman's mother, and on him, of course, on all the family. And it's called Nine Tailors after a ring of bells, which was done in villages to announce the death of somebody there. And I looked on Google, and I got an account of that. In some parishes in England, the centuries-old tradition of announcing a death on a church bell is upheld. In a small village, most people would be aware who was ill, and so broadcasting the age and sex of the deceased would identify them. To this end, the death was announced by telling, that's tolling the bell, that's single blows on the bell, the sex, then striking off the years. 3 blows meant a child, twice 3 a woman, and twice 3 a man, thrice 3, sorry. After a pause, the years were counted out at approximately half-minute intervals. The word teller in some dialects becomes tailor, hence the old saying, 9 tailors maketh a man. So that's why tailors, and there is a novel by Dorothy L. Sayers called Nine Tailors, which uses the bell ringing as a plot device. I haven't read it, but that's the same thing. And just one word in it, the sally is the woolen grip for the hands at the lower end of the bell rope. So this is Nine Tailors. 1. The news. Bells killed truth for my mother, rang out the world, cancelled the wedding, and cut us off from the seasonal poignancy of red leaves aptly and merely falling. The deaths and wrongs of the case faded in the dim breathing of sheaves pitched up in the stackyard to an anonymous heating. And I saw the rain blur in the normal way, skies darkening and cobwebs sagging to mud, beaded, still beautifully clinging. All as useless as notes of whatever bird singing. I walked in Wellington St Mac, shooting rain-soaked starlings. When you were asked to toll 9 tailors for the dying of your mother's son, the pressure of rain can fracture the world you ring. 2. The bells. In the belfry you are told who is dead. You take the Sally, the white wool grimy with such deaths, and he is ended. You toll 9 strokes on tenor, then 1 for every year he lived, a polite record, missing all the hard bits of the score. The stains of past deaths are thrown as shadows across tree and bright puddles as the bells hunt him home. All their lives they have tried to recognise who dies when bells roll, bellow in the night, easy. But the tolling when strangers die is nothing, though the bell breath hangs on in the deep fens where the swerving lights of his pale mornings gutter in the ponds. So they counted the strokes on the stoical darkness. The borrowed voice clangs in the wind like wings. Bells wear down to the last station of his cross. Bells spread out flat miles of stumbling cries. Young, perhaps they knew him, though, who flings at last haranguing into the lead sky. The metal slams his last count from the tower and shudders back its echoes like a bat in flight. A brother's voice finishes the war. 3. The echoes. We needed a spring that part of the year, something slim and innocent in the air that was heavy with blood and the ceaseless breathing of wars. When he happened, nobody recognised or moved to him, but an autumn like memories of bells was known passing the new and old houses. He walked where he had lived, people's eyes twisting away, because his face was as clear as death, they could not see him passing them. Intangible things cleared around him, and the mist, when it happened, buckled like snakes away from the freedom of his shoulders. The brightness and wonder shook what apples we had. He came like seasons in the village. All the dead sky clanged when our blood walked through. Yes, I have to believe in the authenticity of that poem and of the voice that there is there. I'm going on to a slightly lighter take on World War II in another sonnet from this collection called Parachutes in Second World War, 1940. I can't do justice to the Suffolk accent, but I can give it an approximation. Enemy was action. 1940, Norman would have been 4, so this is like a dialogue between him and his father. Obviously his father talked about the war to him, my parents didn't to me. Enemy was action. Poetry, dreaming. Not good for a boy to be brought up poor, every night juddered through by loud world war, and yet sometimes the death's head turned to meaning. Did careless talk cost lives? Because of spying. But what our wireless said had to be true. Luftwaffe blue-eyed berserks from the blue, blonde fatal agents down the black night flying. Did Hans invent parachutes? No, one of ours. Hey Dad, will there be women parachutes? Don't you go putting ideas in Hitler's head. Of course, wouldn't be right to pot a girl dead in mid-air. Will they flap or glide or swoop? They float more like seeds off dandelion flowers. And another set in wartime was a bit more upbeat at Aunt Ivy's, Christmas 1944. My Aunt Ivy, all the Christmases through the war, and right through my long childhood's winter good cheer. At Ivy Lodge Farm in that stone kitchen, she'd cook, then up in the dining room carve and serve and clear, then down that long passage to kitchen and larder, and back there she'd wash up and there cut the cake, and yes, she'd get back to the mince pies just in time. Then up there press her father-in-law to a port, just for the Christmas toast, Pa, and answer the door and say, come in, do, to whoever come and cut the cake and come again across the hall to play the piano, that's if nobody else will, sing music hall, hymns, carols, and inwardly sing winters of crickets and summers of grasshoppers. Thank you. That's me for the moment. And next I'll introduce Christopher Pollnitz, who is a long-time colleague of Norman's and fellow poet, and he's going to read some more of Norman's poetry.
Norman and Jean arrived in Newcastle 1963, and Lois and I arrived in Newcastle in 1975, and Norman and Jean were going on a sabbatical.
Yes.
So we got to go stay in their house as a sabbatical house, and we got to read The Cactus, which is the poem. We got to meet the cactus. Well, you can read The Cactus too, but which I propose to do in a moment. Magnificent flower that it had. And everybody told us when we arrived in Newcastle, you have to read Norman's Cactus poem. And they were right. It was highly popular. It was the poem of the hour.
Pictures on the website, apparently.
Wonderful. The Cactus. 1. The cactus flowers are still in the cold moon. Swim in the dark. Each petal is pale in the flesh from the deep graves below the valley where the roots work and moan for water, never resting in the stone bruises of this droughty country. The largest stretch heavy white petals open like beggars, and outward in a dreaming greed, till the yellow inside is a trembling foot across. The petals soapstone blades, rigid, till the night's silence bursts to the bellow of these more silent conches. The moon pairs colours, so that this is a black moth, dips down the parched roof, and turns above these white flowers, and turns again and again across the fat waiting. His wings are so large he shadows these muscular flowers, so large I can feel their silent beat on the dim air, so thick they stumble like a sigh as he trims again across the gulf of a flower. Breathes open his wings and drops deep into the sulphurous monstrance, the quivering of the anthers. 2. He is not dead, but drenching for his greed in the desperate sex of the flower. And yet I can't stop thinking, however frightened I am of people dying, pale deaths, thick and flowering over the lawns, whenever we drop the palisades, and wildly nightwalk. My father died gently, resting from the grass, dewed and smiling, fell asleep and dreamed, only that he closed his wings and dropped. My friend tore off his black and storm-wind hair, hitting a wall at 85, and 2 days wrote young, indelible pain on hospital ceilings. My neighbour died simply and dourly, defeated in the valley he won by his ageing senses, defeated by food on his way to the lavatory. And my kind poet, cursorily drowned, with his black mood all smothered by the sea, and his white ashes as small as 6 months old. 3. God of the glowing centre of the flower. Moth's coiled, exquisite tongue, you also run that grey and belling pack of winged black fire, broken blood, timely osteopath, Crooktooth, who pulls us all down dead. Call off those grey-limbed, bleach-mouthed hounds for a while. Give these a few years at least. My pale-haired daughter, who fears at night only that Daddy will get dark on him. Death for her is a gap in the air. And my son, whose main talent is laughing, who is dazzled by a touch. For him, night is astonishing enough, a flower incredible. And most, my wife, as slim and nervous as flight, whose smile is uncertain as moth wanderings. It is no wonder she needs your respite to grow and open to her moonlit balance. She's married me. And since then all light has snares, all flowers haunt with the eye's danger. Let her live. Yes, even till there is something she can see that she can trust. That's, for me at least, an early-ish poem of Norman's. It's not all that early, I suppose. And I wanted to move on now to one of what I think of as the poems of Norman's maturity, a poem of a big, grand poem, I would call this, called The Wrath of Tregellis. Tregellis is the tallest of the Glasshouse Mountains in Queensland. Tregellis' Dreamtime story is of an angry father, angry with a delinquent son who has failed to warn and save the mother, Tregellis' wife. Appropriately enough, the mountain Tregellis is a volcanic mountain. You can realise from lots of the references in this poem. All right, the wrath. Churunga I mentioned. Possibly I don't have to tell people this, but it's a stone in which you can deposit your soul if you're one of the people, to keep it safe there. The Wrath of Tregellis. Back in Europe, they can't know what we've lost to become Australians, and not for long will they see what we've gained. The imperfect disc of salt on my glass table is a dried tear from my writing to my mother 5:13 this morning. I should like it to stay. Valuing things is an act of turning away, of mistranslation. Losing is finding, loving is leaving, absence makes the heart. God isn't religious. Body must be brief for soul to mean a thing. I love you is said across a planetary curve. What is Tregellis' magnificent turning away to do with the brief salt of a tear, dried from small hours sobbing at a glass table? So angered by the deed of one of his children, he turned Churunga, volcanic plug of wrath, to gaze upon the Pacific till the world is changed. Why the Churunga? His denial, his trachyte fury, caught them all as they are, in their slow time, broke the Mesozoic for the magic of fact. What were they all before his granite gaze turned constant, out and over variant seas, when wrath entered the world and dawned on them? Brave spirits. Tregellis holds them still as fury. So I have a place, far from Suffolk, to write a true dream about my mother. So, this is not the vision of Captain Cook. The salt disk of a short dried tear on glass has not the cloaked gaze of the glasshouse mountains. Cook meant the glass blowers' furnaces. Apt enough for a short Yorkshireman so far offshore. Cook only made a name. What more should I do? A tear on a flat glass table. Was it for this? Wrath seems different. More distant celebration for Kelly and Hall, Jim Jones and blokes alone. What are we all without that shadow gaze of a worn country where we cry to dream again? But love's transparent. But love names and breaks. When I love you, or you my mother, I find a distance, and I hold you clear, though furious beauties break on the lee shore. After the sublime failure to merge, we roll apart, and you are as real as me. Tibrigargan glooms triumphant over seas. Between the flux, love furrows, breaking waves, and his enchanted family. A friend to man, glares Tibrigargan over the curves of seas. I think I might need to miss the birdsong poem, or have we got time?
Not time to do that.
Sorry?
I'm not keeping
right.
time. But, no, do.
I will do this one. It's a poem from the Birds of Britain series, which is one of Norman's really important sequences. For me, at least, it's really a really influential sequence. Birdsong at the Double Locks is set in Exeter, and why it's called the Double Locks will appear from the poem very soon. Birdsong at the Double Locks. There must be the pub down there, hunched between canal and river. Double locks, of course, roofs in shadow from trees by a wide lock pool. Peace in blue winter clouds. Then, out of the south they come, two hurtling, yard-long hellhounds. Well, red panting, tan-pelted Alsatians. Walk on. The oak's too wide to climb. Walk on. They've got collars. No fear. The dogs, one's a bitch, swirl round me, epicentre me, gash grinning, growling. Their long, broad paws chop, scrabble small gravel out into the canal. Keep calm. Think of something else. I keep looking for owners, or whoever these towering wolves may own. One snorts hugely and glares. Does my briefcase count as a weapon? They rush front, rush back, won't leave me alone. Then the birdsong breaks, like spring leaflings up there. Then, yes, the green same notes. A thrush sings and brings chill silver rain, and sings more like a lock filling. The dogs grin, dog size again. I grin back. Then, at the top bough of the oak, where that thrush sings, thin rain, on I stride, we'll soon lose the song in dark, dreaming, grateful winter beer. That gives you some idea of Norman's talent for the comic verse narrative. He doesn't mind making himself silly. What am I that should not seem for the song's sake a fool, as Yeats puts it. Norman was a famous cricketer, renowned for his vertical spin bowling, off which I once took a catch, which was my renown, my only claim as a cricketer. And of course that's something that unites England with Australia, which was one of Norman's concerns in many ways, one of his emotional concerns. So this poem from the New South Wales sonnets, called The Bat Gunnedah, is not about flying foxes. It's about that icon of our sporting culture here in Australia particularly, and they might have them in England too. I wouldn't want to say. The Bat Gunnedah. All dust from the old wicket out to the fences. Though hoof prints last, in the tesserae of the dam, the cattle are gone, down the long paddock somewhere. Dust, thin along the smooth water skin of the trough. How can you smell the dust in this motionless air? Flies, once the voice of dust on all the dry senses, have given up their sour whinge, I am that I am. From the barn comes an old and air-dry human cough. The shine's gone off the leathery sun in the west. Air darkens under these verandas. Dark feels good. A straight-backed grey woman, breath crackling in her chest, bends over a sports bag. Its stiff straps won't uncoil. Lifts out by its handle a glisten of pale wood and lost world enchanted perfume of linseed oil. And this is a last sonnet. Once a year in the 1980s, Norman and Tom Naseby and Roland Robinson would set out for a poetry writing camp at Little Wabi, which is on the Hawkesbury River. And to this would come some 40 or 50 11 and 12-year-olds from Hunter Valley primary schools, and they'd come to write poetry day and night virtually. Tom Naseby organised the school kids because he was a school inspector as well as a poet. Roland Robinson, some of you may have known him, was a walking anthology of English poetry. And Norman was endlessly inventive of exercises to help these pre-teenagers get out the poem they had in them. The camps are a favourite memory for me of Norman's talent, no, greatness perhaps, as a teacher, a teacher of poetry, and how to write your poem. This poem is called Listening to Little Wabi, poetry class. So, got to be very quiet and listen, and then write your poem about everything you can hear. I hear Rachel proclaiming that she can see stars in the water under the wharf. Far off engines pulse, uneasy, resentful of the black silence that's underwater. There's chuckle and answer, boys' feet on stones, at the busy very edge of the tide. Down by the water, that longest-haired girl talks about listening, but has not yet begun. My foot on a rock, my head against a tree, I hear the creak of a remembered storm. The tree pushes up through rocks, listening only and answering only to the wind. Yes, hear the stars down there in the water. They're struggling to get out into the sky.
I'd like to introduce Zeny Giles to read from an excerpt from an unpublished novel of Norman's, which we at Catchfire Press were hoping to add to our new collection, but unfortunately we couldn't. So we thought today we would have a little reading of it here with Zeny.
Yes, thanks, Don. Just a little bit about this book. It's a novel, and it's a fantasy novel. And Norman was a great expert on fantasy literature, and he wrote quite a few manuscripts. And we were struck with the power of the writing. So it's interesting to be able to give you an example of some of his prose writing. The protagonist in this novel is Tom Ngorokan, who is of European and Aboriginal descent. The book is set in 2348 CE, and Tom has the power to change his shape. He's a shapeshifter, and he changes from a man into a sulphur-crested cockatoo. So I want to read you the section when he changes. Once up and away from the shack, and out onto the wet after-storm air, the bird started to enjoy himself. He knew his wings were gleaming glorious in the dark. He beat northwest across the spattering raindrops that were travelling northeast, then struck out faster for the thin amber line of the west. At first, because he remembered that something might be watching for cockatoos right now, he flew near the tree level. Then he remembered it was ground level shadows he was supposed to be hunted by, and flew higher again. He cursed as he angled up, the creaking after dark swear words of a disturbed sulphur crest. Then, as the clouds frayed apart, he glimpsed way over to the south his special star people, the two Muyi that forever pointed their screams at the white gum constellation the Gubba called the Southern Cross. They calmed him a while, and he rode the night under him like a real bird hero from the stories, for a while anyway. And you'll notice that the landscape is a landscape of the Hunter Valley. Soon the high Watagans were behind him, full of rain and dark and a surprising lot of owl calls, and he was flying fast over bloodwood country, red and yellow bloodwoods both, Darkinjung country the Warranura had been arguing about, and the Gamilaroi trying to talk themselves into since the first sunset. Tendancy women country. To keep his bird brain memory working, he called out taunts and boasts at himself. Come on, you bludger, get yourself over there. Sing up old Buggerlug's Burragurra. Crest for crown. You're a beautiful bird, A Burragurra is the sacred rock. Soon he spun smoothly down out of the windy dark, tasting with tongue and nostrils the night trees all around. One last glimpse of the Muyi shining high in the south, and he landed where an Abobacal should approach the rock, below and south of the shallow corner where the Maker Walker had stepped on his first stride from Mount Yango. Thick-tongued he shouted the two shouts under an old yellow bloodwood where he was hidden from the rock by prickly Moses bushes. But before he could even stagger onto his cramped human toes, the rock spoke. It was deep speaking, too deep to hear with his ear holes, but he could feel it all through him. It had happened before, but him only a couple of times, and both times had been after he had a stint of spirit calling on the rock for a while. The old rock, awake up tonight, what it said wasn't in Darkinjung or a Wabakal or any mother tongue, of course. Listen, you between the shouts. Listen. Now's your chance, poor silly dying goody. You don't got to bother to twist. Not now, because you don't need to want to. Stay out of all that short life goody time. Just leak into us, slow and gentle, all easy like. And never got to bother with keeping alive or worry with being dead or scrabble into out of that twisted self no more. Don't say nothing back, Tom. He shivered or ruffled, or maybe his crest if he still had one rattled forward in terror. It could kill you, reckoned the bird or man, whichever he was, listening to that rock. If that was your place, if that was your darkened human, and if you were spread out on top of the rock to watch the one restful star ride up beside the poor moon man, maybe you wouldn't want to go past untwisting. A lot of clever fellas might have gone out that way, and maybe that would be the way Tom Nagoricon would end up. But right now he had his word to keep, and anyhow it was nothing new that the Burragurra voice gave him the creeps. That was the way the old rock was, though. Couldn't be helped. And finally, I just want to read to you just one paragraph where the bird takes flight again. Tom makes a shout and then turns into the bird again. Every bird around went quiet when he called the one shout, the single noise that was twist and the only answer to untwist. Then everything was changed and right. A brief instinctive preen while the rest of the bird life relaxed. Just tidy a very tidy feather or two on the breast and wing fronts. Just scratch his malar feathers to proper puff shape. Then he threw forward his crest, and his wild, beautiful personal screech ripped the main sheet of the morning apart. The new sky in its breezes, its depths, spaces, distances. Air flooded over and under his wings, heavy with morning blossom tastes, but stirring too with milky patterns of lost cold and coming heat, of push and swerve, of lift and abyssal drop. He flapped himself mightily out into the air, wheeling round on the big wide beat of his wings, loving the hint of yellow glow from the splendour beneath him.
Just moving on a bit further in Norman's career, I neglected to mention also another acquaintance I had with Norman was at Poetry the Pub in Newcastle, and he was there for many years, and he wrote a poem about the man who created Poetry the Pub, a man called Bill Iden, who was also another Englishman from a rather working class background, or a poor background, and who had a remarkable talent, which came out later in life. So this is a tribute to Bill by Norman. It's called The Mystic Boilermaker. Bill, by trade, was a boilermaker, and this was virtually Norman's tribute to him. The Mystic Boilermaker. They used to say that this earth was forged there in the sun. The hammersmith, he shades his eye. I think I see how it's done. Earth is the given. There are those who mine her hardest ores, and there are wilder fellows still who melt away the dross. Fire is the second given. Then, if you make it hot enough, call for the spirits of the air till bellows roar and cough. Smite through the softened metal to where the red gold glares. Shape every leaf to the metal tree. Leave whole the fruit it bears. The metal you have hammered thin, dunk in the water stream. The fire sinks dead. The air leaps live in the grey mortal stream. As air and fire give off their joy and hiss their furies down, in the water's still embrace the fervent metals drown. Though mystic metal workers beat shapes without nature's grain, they never may tell how it's done. Dead souls might walk again. The shaping of the metal is like making ere the fall. A poet who's a boilermaker might redeem us all. I was going to read another poem of Norman's about a bird poem, but I think we're running a bit late, so we might actually conclude this section with the Pinkerton haiku.
Norman was very interested in writing in the Japanese verse form haiku, and he produced two books of haiku, one called the Kelly haiku, and this is a dialogue, an internal dialogue, based on the story of Madame Butterfly, only it's really a modified version of it, of Puccini's opera. It just involves the characters of Cho-Cho-san and Pinkerton, the American officer who comes and falls in love with her. The opera has a much more complicated story, but this one just has two characters. And it's called the Pinkerton haiku, but you might notice as we read it that Cho-Cho-san always speaks in haiku, but gradually Pinkerton, as he goes back towards, he has to go back to the ship, and he starts to speak in a different kind of verse, which is more like Kipling or Browning. So that's a very interesting conjunction of voices. He had started to speak like her when he was in Japan and with Cho-Cho-san, and then gradually that gets worn off as he goes back to his more usual way of thinking about the world of men, which is important to him. So the Pinkerton haiku, an internal dialogue. Cho-Cho-san is writing haiku. And
Pinkerton meets a woman poet.
My hand is too small. His hand drowns it easily. His eyes don't see it.
Her hand was so small and brave. It was lost in mine, unhesitating.
Songbirds are nesting in sunlit leaves and flowers, all strangers to him.
Ain't there some custom, some sharing a special rice, bowing to the sea?
Eggshell syllables. Handle with care, foreigner, with your breaking voice.
Little singing birds are nesting by a window, petals and droppings.
No matter, songbirds. If you scatter the petals, we'll see the harbour.
Robins? Both birds sing. In the States, only the male would use such language.
Koto and birdsong. He learns to take tea. His smile still wears its hard shoes.
She set my toes free. Now I can sit further down. My left feet relax.
He likes my music. He can give up smiling now. Needn't be happy.
She is so happy. We sit very still, except one turbulent pulse.
2. Cho-Cho-san uses Kerry.
Pinkerton appreciates poetry.
No.
Oh, sorry. Pinkerton uses kana. Sorry. Wrong page.
He is so happy. He has only to beckon and doesn't have to.
I feel like a kid. Just laugh, touch, hold, and will she be formal in bed?
Only my body to do his shopping. He buys bright American sweets.
Woman, foreign land. I'm your explorer, and I'm, oh boy, lost in you.
Such a long coastline, this man's body, for his love to try to patrol.
I'll lean over her, trace little poems on her, tenderly, later.
Man, the new mountain between my body lifts up volcanoes of verbs.
She's the white island, and the moon looks for, touches, and will never forget.
If I move away, he may be able to sleep. I don't mind waking.
Hey, I'm all laid out. She leans down, looks along me, my geographer.
One wide purple curve of moonless, quiet harbour. How his body sighs. 3. Cho-Cho-san's calligraphy.
Now, Pinkerton appreciates poetry.
My dreams of his night, drifted far beyond harbour, drown in purple sea.
In my bunk each night, I'll dream her small syllables, small knee to small spile.
He thinks love is play. In the dawn I play for him, smiling, not weeping.
Sex is. Love goes on. She gives me little poems. I give listening.
The birds have scattered many hundreds of blossoms. One petal blows in.
On my bare shoulder, the dawn wind leaves a petal. One of those poems.
Spring is autumn, now the little sea wind roams this man's long forests.
Lying on a bed, I'm brushed by her light poems, and that's a poem.
Naked in dawnlight, I play our music, recite our small, dry teardrops.
Oh, how love goes on, seasonable, careful journeys, lyrical murmurs.
His tall eyes open. In that moment, I am dead and miss a note.
A moment like this you hang on to. Then birdsong, sunrise, start the world.
Not one butterfly for the sunrise, no shadow to cross his fuzzed back.
All short, her poems. They hang in the middle air, reverberating.
He pretends for me that women are all alike. I smile, shine his shoes.
She is like a child, helping me fasten my pants. She covers nothing.
4. Cho-Cho-san uses flying white.
Pinkerton discovers Sabi.
His face turns away. The sun strokes her hands right down his rough foreign cheek.
She likes anything. I expected butterflies, but she likes dust motes.
Two birds are singing even at midday today in such small shadows.
This is serious, except in her quick and her unstressed syllables.
He thinks in love play. All sunlit he plays with me, all serenity.
What I want to prove cannot be proved. I sweat in monosyllables.
He is always hot. I make my hands as cool as that butterfly's wings.
Crewman with a note. Won't take a minute, sir. Takes away my minutes.
His eyes travel back on all his seas and skies. They've left my poem.
Then she washes me and my spotless uniform, and I feel solemn.
Two small words with wings. Goodbye and sayonara. The sea stumbles between.
Two close whispered words. Say it. Don't want her to cry. Lucky they don't much.
He says he will write. Will he send me the silence we once lay inside?
Orders, honey. Yeah, she understands pretty good with no big speeches.
Broken together our saltwater tears by my so careful eyelash.
Could she tell apart the salt global tears and mine, quiet on her face?
5. Later, Cho-Cho-san and Buson.
Later, Pinkerton, Browning and Kipling.
Why does he not write? The longest, most verbose, loud love letter would do.
She'd admire me now. Older and stronger, I expect. Perhaps it's as well that I couldn't stay with her longer, for a man's got to answer the bell of duty and lead on his men. Yes, a man needs the world of men.
Cold blue curved harbour that butterflies will not cross. All your verbs have gone.
It's funny. I suppose I still miss her. Yes, we really had a great time. She'd quiver and gasp when I'd kiss her. She taught me how man and girl rhyme. How could she understand that a man more than that needs a world of men?
Butterfly outside on the screen where sunset goes. Every foot is dark.
Women, what can you make of them? Like the engineer said at Bondi, they come on so brave when you love them. When a man leaves them, they cry. I think the world revolves around them, and men get more out of a world of men.
His eyes have the sea in them, so he can't feel this heavy body.
Keep it short as a mini swallow, the second mate said at Bondi. For man's got a star to follow. Girls are brief as a butterfly. Just a day in the lifetimes of men, and they're gone, a world of men.
Full harvest moon, harbour too silver to move, belly full of verbs.
They call it the first foreign shore leave, young fellow, the captain advised at Bondi. You know, funny and faithful and yellow. Like Kipling said, well, that's no lie. He's a man that knows races and men, and girls placed in the world of men.
Too sentimental. What could he carry under his ribs? 40 weeks.
There's an heiress out there in Seattle, the Pearl of Pearl Harbor, no less. Talks hard with a cynical rattle, which is just what I'm saying. I'm doing, I guess. Real strong-minded, but she expects men. Shows her sense in a world for men.
6. Cho-Cho-san is writing less.
Pinkerton has a poetic feeling.
My low little bed has a hard single pillow. I share it with pain.
Somewhere robins nest in flowers, high above a purple harbour. Moving shadows brush a poem on the steep slopes of her body. How the flying white of moonlight thrills the characters of pain.
The poems he knew rose and fell with stresses. Now they happen to me.
I can feel her ribs, lost rhythms, sea wind chill on her wet forehead. Hell, what's happening to me? Silence sways within a window.
Not understanding.
Sorry.
Well, not understanding light Japanese syllables, he can't hear his name.
Silence sways within her window. Shallow syllables of breathing. God, what's happening to me? Such pain to beat through the moonlight, tear like tides down her white island. Poem, quick. What was her name? Thank you.